In the quiet little town, after all the lights went out, an old man would climb the hill behind his cottage. He carried a small glass jar, and to anyone watching from a distance, it might look like he was catching fireflies. But if you got close, you'd see the shimmer inside wasn't from any earthly bug. It was starlight. The village children called him the Star Collector. They whispered stories about him, saying he could talk to the night, that he was stealing stars from the sky for someone he loved. And they weren't entirely wrong. A long time ago, the man, Rowan, was a young astronomer who lived for the sky. He and his wife, Lila, would spend their evenings under the stars, naming constellations and making secret wishes. When their daughter, Iris, was born, Rowan promised to show her the stars too. He even built her a small telescope from spare parts. Together, the three of them would trace silver patterns across the heavens. But one winter, a sickness came like a quiet fog, and when it finally lifted, Lila was gone. The house grew cold, and the stars that once felt so alive now seemed distant and indifferent. Rowan stopped looking up. Then one evening, little Iris brought him a glass jar with a flickering candle inside. "Papa," she said, "I caught a star for you." In her eyes it was real, a piece of heaven she could hold. For the first time in months, Rowan smiled. He lifted the jar and whispered, "One for her." Years passed. Iris grew up and went off to chase her own stars. Rowan stayed behind, his hair turning white. But every single night he climbed that same hill, held out his jar, and whispered the same words, "One for her." He learned how to tilt the glass just right to catch the shimmer of starlight, gathering what felt like tiny pieces of memory, echoes of Lila's laughter. When people asked why, he'd just smile and say, "So she won't be alone up there." One fierce, windy night, the stars were as sharp as glass. Rowan, now slower and unsteady, still made his climb. At the top, he sat down, breathing hard, and lifted his cracked jar. "One for her," he whispered, his voice barely a thread of sound, "and one for me." When Iris came home a few days later, she found the jar beside him on the hill, filled with the softest glow she had ever seen. It was real starlight. She buried him under the old oak where the stars were brightest, and placed the glowing jar by his grave. Every year, on that same night, Iris climbed the hill with her own jar, whispering to the wind, "One for them." Travelers passing by sometimes say they see tiny, soft lights floating up from the hill, joining the stars above. They say it's the Star Collector, still gathering the light of a love that never truly fades.